Hi, this time I'm going to continue with my analysis as an occultist of this video showing 17 Japanese rituals and occult games. If you haven't seen part 1, please check out the playlist in the description. You will find it there and all of the other parts. I highly recommend that you watch part 1 because I explain some things that I would consider essential to understand these mysteries. This video could serve as inspiration for your tabletop RPGs. Those of you that are new to the channel, I focus mainly on tabletop role-playing games. And if you don't think these things are real or anything like that, just consider it fiction or fantasy and inspiration for your games or whatever. And also, I want to apologize if there is a bit of choppiness when I use the mouse to put the video on play, because my computer is not very good. So let's get started.
Fed Up. The Fed Up game is for people that are tired of this current world and wish to visit a different one. You'll need a square piece of paper measuring 5 by.
Okay, this star is quite typical in occult. You may immediately make some connections with a certain nation that conveniently appeared during a certain war. I have to be really careful because YouTube takes down these sorts of videos. A certain war that could be considered the number 2 war in the world, and this nation came to be. It is a nation of, yeah, there is great evil there. And you can see, for starters, they are not, most of them are not, really careful with this, Jewish. They are, waiting for the YouTube algorithm, Sabbatean. You should look into Sava, Tai, Se, B. That is their messiah, their cult idol. So yes, in this sort of symbol, in the best of cases, it should represent the harmony between the world below and the world above. I mentioned this in my other video, because you can see that it's basically two triangles. The base of represents this lower world. The other base of the triangle represents the base of the upside down world, let's call it like that. But you can see the threefold power of a certain number. You can see the number 6, right? Because you have 6 points. There are also 6 triangles and 6 sides, 6 lines. So you have 6 repeated 3 times. It is a symbol oftentimes employed in demonic operations because of that very same nature. Like I said, it has a positive side to it, but sadly it has been used by Satanists pretending to be Jewish. Remember that the current religion known as Judaism is not Jewish at all. And this is science fiction. YouTube, you cannot take down this video because this is science fiction. This is all make-believe. So yes, and just look at it. The way that they mutilate a certain part of the human body when the baby is born, and especially males, and they take that little, very crucial, very important part of the male body, and they snip. That is insane. Okay, let's continue.
5 centimeters exactly. Something to write with, preferably a red pen, a safe place to sleep, and
Again, the red color, like I explained in part 1, very powerful in magic. It's a violent color to breach the barrier that exists between worlds. And if you combine red ink or red pigment or whatever with this symbol, you're basically creating a bridge in most cases towards infernal places. So you need to be very careful. At least as in the way that this ritual handles it, it is very quite risky. Let's continue.
And of course, a strong desire to leave this world. Step 1. Draw a hexagram on the paper, as big as you can possibly make it. Step 2. Write Akita, or fed up, within the hexagram. Step 3.
This ritual is too charged with negative energy. You have a very most people that are going to be doing this ritual are depressed. How you call them? Just depressed people, alienated people, people that do not feel connected to this world. They are searching for an escape. They could have gone through some very tragic situations, but this is only going to make things worse. This is not a ritual to modify your environment or your world positively. This is a ritual of escaping. That's the act of a coward. Even if you have been through some terrible situations, you have to call things as to what they are, how they are, instead of thinking how you can actually get even, let's call it like that, or modify that which was wrong, right those wrongs. You are considering escape here. So this is a ritual charged with negative energy. And just take a look at the picture. You have that fed up expression in the middle. That represents you in the middle of the worlds, almost stuck in limbo. This is a very negative ritual. Let's continue.
Go to bed with the paper under your pillow, or alternatively, held in your hand.
That's a typical in many different magical operations, even in positive operations as well. Placing some sort of talisman or symbol, piece of paper with a special mark or sigil or whatever under your pillow, it's going to have a direct effect upon your mental processes. They say that you should hold it in your hand as well, that it is also permissible or viable. It would only work, in my opinion, if you place it in your left hand. Like I mentioned in my other video, that the left hand is to absorb things. So let's say that you wanted to be more courageous or more optimistic or something, right? You could write optimistic, courageous on a piece of paper with the appropriate symbols, and you could place them in your left hand. And during the night, you would absorb that courage according to that occult philosophy. That virtue, you would absorb it. Let's continue.
Step 4. Before falling asleep, think about everything you despise about this world. Channel those feelings and think hard about how much you want to leave before.
What a terrible ritual. Look, so negative. Instead of actually thinking what you dislike of this world and trying to figure out ways to change that, to correct that, to modify that, you are thinking about escaping. Terrible ritual. This is the lowest of the low. Let's continue.
Drifting off to sleep. When you awake, check to see if the paper is still there. If it is, then your desire to leave wasn't strong enough. Perhaps you second guessed at the last moment as the thought of what if the next world is even worse crept in to stay. But if the paper is nowhere to be seen.
Okay. When it comes to appearing and disappearing, when it comes to a material object actually appearing and disappearing, that would be astonishing. Even those that spend their lives practicing these things, and they do some things like every day of my life I'm going to be concentrating inside of this container so that something appears into it, and they are focusing and they are trying to manifest something, some sort of object, bringing something out of nowhere. In the most of the cases, well, when it comes to the occult circles, that information that is kept from the mainstream, at most they have produced like a very tiny speck of dirt, or some, perhaps some, even a bit of vegetable matter, and like a tiny little amount. And you could even say, well, it's because the container was contaminated. So when the person was trying to manifest something, that basically it's something that got stuck in the container, and then that produced the dirt, or it was basically small traces of dirt that came together, and that's why you think that you produced something, but it's actually the little specks coming together. Or yes, they try to find a reason, a logical explanation as to why that happens. Even if you were to think about that, if you were to consider that it is possible to materialize or dematerialize something, I think it would be too astonishing. In most cases, it wouldn't be possible. Now, thinking back to this ritual, like I said, it's a negative ritual. Definitely don't do it. Another way of channeling this ritual is that before going to sleep, you could think about, like I said, the things that you don't like in the world or in your life, and how to fix them, how to correct them. And perhaps if you practice astral journeys or astral travel, thinking on how you could reach a dimension where you could find the answers. Now, those of you that don't think this is possible, remember that some geniuses throughout history, sometimes they actually went to sleep and they woke up with the answer, and look for different inventions and all of that. You could say that they made the journey across. Or if you want to look at it from another point of view, you could say, oh, well, they went to sleep, their brain rested, and they woke up and they had the answer. Regardless, if it works for you, whichever way you want to handle things, if it's for a positive thing, I would definitely recommend trying it. Even if you don't know occult symbols, you could write, like I said, just the thing that you want to figure out. Maybe you could write something like, maybe you want to be more efficient at work. Maybe you want to discover a new hobby, whatever. Write down something like, I want to be more efficient at work, or I want to discover a new hobby, or anything. Write it down on a piece of paper and put it under your pillow, or keep it on your left hand. Go to sleep and see if something happens. And without symbols, like I said, do not fool around with these symbols unless you are an occultist. But it's also like a fun little game to see if you obtain some results. Let's continue.
Then you've accomplished your goal. Enjoy your new world, whatever it may entail, but be warned, you can never come back, and if you try the ritual again, you might not have as strong of a desire to leave as last time. Even if you succeeded, you'll just end up in another new world.
Okay, this is very typical of Japan. In Japan, I would consider there is a pathology. That's just my personal view on it. You know how the isekai genre became extremely popular? Those anime, manga, light novels where the character dies, usually killed by a truck, or for whatever reason, the character dies, leaves this world, and reincarnates or resurrects or reappears in a fantasy dimension of sorts. And this is very disturbing. I feel as if there are a lot of Japanese people. You can also see some channels here in YouTube. There is this channel, The Japanese Reporter. In Spanish, we have a really good channel. It's called Japón Desconocido, Unknown Japan. There are many channels that actually tell you the real situation, not the false image from the more popular Japanese channels. Just think about the more popular YouTubers that are always in Japan and having fun, and every now and then they have a video, I criticize Japan, but hey, come over here, it's great. They are usually paid. They are shills. There are a lot of problems in Japan, and I feel there is a lot of depression. They do not know what to do. They have been programmed from very little, from very young. Here in the West, we also have that, but in Japan, just think about it. There are so many centuries to the point that they actually ritualized suicide. They actually ritualized taking your own life. If your ruler commands it, time of the samurai. Oh, please, ruler, don't destroy that village. Hmm. Look, ruler, please don't destroy the village. I'll take my own life if you don't destroy it. And the samurai, and the ruler, I'll destroy it anyway. They have been so programmed like that, and I feel like there is this great pathology where they cannot fight against their own corrupt rulers. They have been, it's almost like a religion to them. So they can only think about escaping. Isekai genre, like this ritual, escaping to another world. You need to fix these things. There is no guarantee that other worlds will have a better situation. In fact, if you are not able to accomplish something here, you'll probably be even less successful in other places. Just my hunch, some general thoughts on that. But yes, let's continue.
Suji Ura. Also known as the Crossroads Fortune Telling or the Fortune Game, this is a very popular ritual that's exists for hundreds of years. You can play this game alone or with a small group of friends, and all you'll need is a comb, and each player must have something to cut things.
Okay, I think I heard comb. When it comes to hair, never. This is going to shock a lot of people, but never use plastic or metal combs. Use wood. There are wooden combs. I actually have my wooden. Well, it's not a comb. How do you call it? In Spanish, we call it cepillo, wooden brush, bamboo. It has like bamboo thingies. I forget the name in English, And that's because it doesn't break the energies. From an occult perspective, your hair has this sort of energy field. Have you heard about the Thule Society? Can you actually say this? You know, the from a certain not see party. They were evil sorcerers and female sorcerers, I would say. They knew the secrets of the long hair. Their hair was insanely long. It got to their heels, and they were incredibly powerful in terms of dark sorcery. Of course, you can also employ this for good, but the hair, it creates this sort of force field. The longer you let it grow, you know, all of those legends, Samson, the greatest warrior hero from Hebrew mythology, because of his great strength, because he had long hair. There are many warriors with long hair: Miyamoto Musashi, Kuhulin, Alexander the Great. They all had long hair, long flowing hair, because this hair is connected to the pituitary and pineal glands. It is constantly feeding energy to your mind. You are able to accomplish so many things. That's why in Celtic mythology, when you lose your hair, when you start to lose your hair, it is known as the curse of baldness, because it is considered that you are done. You are completely screwed up. That's why when people start to put substances in their bodies to obtain a better performance, they start to lose their hair. They can no longer live without. They rely completely on those substances. They do not rely on the natural powers of this planet, the earth, the sun, the air, water. They start to deteriorate horribly. So when it comes to this ritual of using a comb, maybe they will say something in a few moments, but I highly recommend that you use a wooden comb, because that way you can preserve that energy field. Let's continue.
Step 1. Go to the crossroads when it's late at night. Step 2. Run your fingers along the teeth of the comb and chant the following 3 times.
This is interesting. Well, crossroads are constantly being used in all sorts of rituals. That's because the crossroads, they represent this connection between the material realm and other invisible places, invisible realms. I find it very interesting that you run your fingers through the comb. Let's see what that is all about.
Suji Ura, grant me a true response. If there are other players, they must chant along with you. Step 3. Wait for a stranger to pass by.
I think this game could have some sort of origin in just like a mythological origin, or maybe based on history. Perhaps I don't know what Sugiura means, but maybe there was someone with great, let's say, magical powers, psychic abilities, and they used to comb their hair with the wooden brush. So maybe somebody borrowed or perhaps even stole that brush from that practitioner. And when they are running their fingers, or yes, the wooden comb or brush, it could be anything. When they are running their fingers, they're actually taking some of that person's leftover power. The energy of that person kind of like was transferred to that wooden comb or brush. And when you are running your fingers through it, you obtain some of that person's power. And that's why you are asking the question, trying to use that power to contact some sort of entity. Let's continue.
It cannot be someone that any of the players know, so finding a crossroads away from your neighborhood is recommended. When you see the stranger approaching, cover your face with what you brought. This could be a book, newspaper, or even a hat or scarf.
I think this is about contacting an entity, using someone as a vessel, as some sort of telephone, if you will, to give you a special message. You may remember in my previous video, part one, I talked about how beings in those invisible realms, they cannot see us, they detect us from smell and sound, mostly, most of the time. So you cover your face in order to keep yourself safe from that spirit, because that's that entity. If they are going to do what I believe they are going to be doing, that is, the spirit is going to speak through someone. The spirit is going to have access to the material world momentarily, and in that moment, that person, that spirit rather, that entity is going to have a clear view or clear sight to your own face. So you want to keep your identity hidden. What if the entity dislikes you for whatever reason, or wants to follow you around or something? That way the entity has no clear image of you. Once they have seen your face, things could be a bit more dangerous. Let's continue.
If there are other players with you, they must cover their faces as well. Step 4. Ask the stranger to tell you your fortune. If the stranger doesn't answer or refuses to tell you, then uncover your face and wait for another stranger to pass by. Once you've found a stranger that will tell you your fortune, keep in mind that person in question has to tell you the truth. But there's no guarantee that it'll be information you or any of the other players would want to hear. A non-supernatural reason why it's not recommended to do this ritual is, of course, that standing in the dark and talking at strangers could potentially lead to someone getting hurt, so keep that in mind. Fun fact before we move on. Well, two actually. One, this legend was brought up in Junji Ito's Love Sickness, which I think is just pretty cool. And two, the game of Suji Ura became so popular that Japan made rice crackers with fortunes inside written on paper. These were called Suji Ura Senbai, or fortune crackers.
Anything that is kind of like that, like a cookie or fortune cracker, supposedly like your spiritual guides, in the best of cases, they're kind of like leading you to um, end up with the right message. Even if you are given the cracker or cookie or whatever, and you take it on your own, supposedly the message has something to do with you, like it's a special message from your guides or protectors, or just life in general. Maybe it's just like, if you consider it to be like God, maybe God is presenting something to you. Remember that the word of God, the concept of God, it is quite ancient. It has nothing to do with Christianity. Christians, as always, they are stealing material from someone else. The Bible, it's the Jewish Tanakh, and they took the word God from, it's a proto-Germanic word. It's a very ancient European concept. Let's continue.
After the events of World War II, companies owned by Chinese Americans adopted these crackers and named them fortune cookies, which we over time has associated as a staple at any Chinese restaurant. So next time you see a fortune cookie, remember that it only exists because of an old Japanese ritual.
I think this ritual is pretty safe, but you have to do some things in order for it to be ethical. Well, first, from a more pragmatic point of view, you need an area where strangers are friendly. You don't know how the person is going to react if you are suddenly approaching someone, some stranger on the street, and you have like your face covered with a book. They're going to think, well, pretty much any normal person is going to think that you are insane. You're covering your face with a book, and if you were to attempt it, you would have to be like very friendly. Like you should have a certain degree of charisma, approaching the person, covering your face, and saying something like, could you please tell me my fortune? Almost like laughing, perhaps. Can you please tell me my fortune? Like, because that person is going to. No, that sounds pretty crazy. It's very difficult to do it without appearing like some sort of crazy person. Very difficult. But let's say that you want to try it. I wouldn't say Suji Ura because I don't know what that. Even now that I am saying it, I kind of like have my guard up. I don't know what that is summoning. But if you're to play the game, maybe you should just ask the question without calling other powers, or perhaps ask like, "Oh, the good and blessed spirits," or something like that. The beneficial, good spirits, because you don't know what you're going to be calling, and then you ask your question. And then let's say that you have the guts to approach a complete stranger, with your book covering your face, and you ask the stranger to tell you your fortune. In fact, I think this game would be much better played with like a younger person, that is, because sometimes kids are always playing games. So if a little kid approaches you with a book on his face and tells you that if you could tell him his fortune, you're going to be like, oh, it's a little kid playing jokes or playing a little game. And you would like perhaps, yes, humor them, right? Like you would tell them their fortune. But you should also make it clear that anyone who speaks through that person should bless the person with good things, because it's not ethical to be using other people as communication devices or telephones, so that some sort of spiritual entity goes into them, so to speak, or hovers around them to give you a special message. The person should be rewarded for that. So maybe you can build your own version of the ritual, saying something like, "Oh, blessed spirits, please speak through the next stranger that I am going to talk to, and give me my fortune, or tell me my future, and let that person be blessed with happiness and good health and good joy." Or that way there is an equal exchange. There is something, the person is getting paid for their time, but you should still cover your face. I would do it, in fact. I think that as long as you channel the good energies, you wouldn't need to cover your face at all. That's just like an extra precaution. But if you're doing things right, you won't need to cover your face. And that way the person, perhaps some sort of power would speak through the person. It's a complete stranger, has nothing to do with you. I have seen this happen when a stranger tells me, or someone else, they give me like, even if I don't ask for that message, they give me a particular message, or they give others particular messages that fit perfectly with the current situation. I remember one time, maybe it was related to something completely different. During college, we had to present this project, and one of the members was nowhere. It wasn't answering the cell phone, nowhere to be found, and the presentation was about to begin, and we were thinking how we were going to do it and all of that. And suddenly this woman came out of nowhere, and she said something like, what did she say? "Están a tiempo, muy bien. You are on time. That's great." But she said it out of nowhere. We didn't know about her. And she just went on. And at the last moment, before we were going to modify things, the other person came just in time. And if we modified things, the presentation wouldn't have been as successful. So I always felt like, oh, maybe it's some sort of entity spoke through that woman, because it had no sense. We didn't know her at all, and she just blurted out that very randomly. So maybe it was a similar case. Well, I think we're going to stop this video here. I will continue perhaps tomorrow or the day after with these like occult related videos. I hope you found it entertaining and informative. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments about anything, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you, and see you later.